Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of TechPixies and the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And today we have a guest, Becs Crosby, who has done all of our programs. But the one that we're going to really talk about today is the Business Beyond Social program. Now, she is an expert in kindness, and we're also going to get some great tips on the importance of kindness in the workplace and how to introduce kindness into your workplace. So, Becs, thanks for being here today. I'm really glad you're here.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Joy.
So we have a couple pairs of sisters in TechPixies, and you're one of them. So tell us about how you ended up joining TechPixies, and tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So I think it was about March or April 2022 when I joined TechPixies, and it had come off the back of some really big life changes for me. So I had decided, after 2 years of being head of internal communications at the BBC during the pandemic, which was a crazy time for us internal communicators, that I would make a change. I decided to leave the BBC to set up my own business, and to do that in Cardiff, where I grew up, rather than London, where I'd been living for 20 plus years. And I knew as soon as I made that decision that I was going to set up my own business, that I needed to learn more about social media. And my sister Rachel was already in the TechPixies community. And I was like, that's what I want to do, and joined a bootcamp call and was just like, sign me up straight away. This is brilliant. It's exactly what I need. I was really confident in my skills as a communicator and in my achievements. And I knew that I needed to learn more about social media. What I didn't know at that time was that I also needed to learn a bit more about myself. And TechPixies have helped me hugely there as well. And then, of course, the Business Beyond Social program came along further down the line, and that has since helped me hugely.
Yeah, so you started in our social media superhero bootcamp. You did our social media management certification, and then you went into our Business Beyond Social program, which also included our Dream Builder program. So you've really done the full spectrum of the things that we offer, but more importantly, you've got the full spectrum of results as well, which I think is so cool. So let's just talk about this transition from being the head of internal communications at an organization like the BBC to launching your own business. There's so many parts that you've got to learn about. And of course, the Business Beyond Social program helps with that. And in a very short period of time, in 1 year, there's been a lot of movements forward. So we sort of had caught up before, just reviewing your year, and the things that you have made moves on are huge. So let's talk about what has transpired in just the last year for your business. You've got your brand set up, you've launched your website, you've got your lead magnet, you've built your mailing list. Talk about doing all of those things.
Yeah. So if you'd asked me this time last year if I would achieve all of those things, which were on a to-do list at the time, I would not have believed you. And I think it is only because of the Business Beyond Social course, with your support and the support of the wider community, and specifically the people within that first cohort of Business Beyond Social, that I have achieved all those things. I was reflecting on this, Joy, and you can have this one for free, because I see BBS as, it's as easy as ABC. This is the communicator in me coming out now. So A is accountability. Every Friday morning, we'd have our coaching session, but then we'd have this get stuff done session afterwards. And we just sit there in silence, but we're all, on camera working away. And that has enabled me to tick those things off on my to-do list. So that is the A, accountability. And then the B is just the business know-how that you get from these brilliant coaches that you've put together. And I have learned a huge amount. And then third, and I think the most important thing, is C, connections. So yes, I've created a website. And if you look at my website, shofficecoms.co.uk, you'll see my words, but you'll also see Denise's brand above me here, and Dawn's photographs. And then also even my privacy policy, that was, done with a fellow tech pixie, Gillian. So I feel like what I have achieved is almost like a group effort. And I hope that in some ways I have helped their businesses to grow as well.
That is so cool. And let's talk about, first of all, I just love it when collaboration happens. And there's a lot of that happening, especially in that group, because everyone in that group is so serious about building their business and they've all got specialty areas. And so the networking in that group, there's a lot of cross pollination with different specialties, different skill sets. And that's what I love about it. So, yeah, Jillian knows privacy policies inside and out and can really specialize in helping someone with that. Dawn's a fantastic photographer and she can help with that. Denise is fantastic with brand. And so, and on and on. So what I love about how you've leveraged the network is you're good at that. You're good at that. I want to borrow some of that. I want to bring you in on that. And, that's just huge. So you also saw growth in your social media feeds as a result of doing the program, and you got 2 additional clients and your first clients within this new business, right? So I love that as well. Well, let's talk about how you grew your mailing list, because I think this is really important. We talk all the time in the social media superhero bootcamp. I talk about the sixth superpower that I teach is that the sales are in the mails. And I think when people do the social media management certification program, they're just trying to learn how to do social media. They're not necessarily trying to do that 6th bit, which is the sales are in the mails bit. And so when people move into BBS from our social media management certifications, they move into the Business Beyond Social program. One of the very first things we make sure they've got is a lead magnet. And you've got to get a lead magnet because you've got to get people off of social media and onto your mailing list. You've got ownership and dominion over your mailing list. You do not have that over social media. So talk about the lead magnet you built, and it was pretty successful. And yeah, share with us what you created.
Yeah, it was. I went from a mailing list of 0 to a mailing list of around 80, I think, within a couple of weeks. So my lead magnet was a challenge, the 7 Days of Kindness challenge. So I invited people to sign up to the challenge, and then every day for 7 days, they had an email land in their inbox, which was a theme, so around kindness. So I think day 1 was like help, day 2 was donate. So all these little different ways that you can be kind. And at the same time, I worry that sometimes people talk about kindness and they think it's really fluffy and it's all hearts and rainbows, and I don't want my business to be perceived in that way. So I also made sure that I was sharing the science behind compassionate leadership and why it's important. And I was using statistics and things that I'd learned on a course that I completed earlier this year in the psychology of kindness and well-being in the workplace. And I had a great response. People really appreciated the tips because there's mixed in with the science. There were some practical tips that people could do. And yeah, it really boosted the mailing list, got it off to a great start.
Yeah, I love that. It's so great. And also, I want to talk about one key point. Hopefully, you're willing to talk about on the podcast. This happens a lot, right? Someone's building a business, and while they're building their business, they have, let's say, retainer clients in the space that they're currently in or what they're good at. So they know, okay, I've got some steady income coming in while I'm building up this business. And so we had you had this great client and still have this great client, and you and I had a conversation about the fears around renewing a contract, right? We all have these fears and we sometimes hold back from reaching out to renew a contract. And I encouraged you to just reach out and check in. And what was the result?
The client came back and said, "Oh, thank you so much for the reminder. I'll get onto that straight away."
Yeah.
So it's and I think that's a really good example, Joy, of where your perspective and common sense, no nonsense business head can really help people. It's like, no, stop getting yourself in a tiz about this. Just get on, do the thing. It will probably take you 10 minutes and then you can just stop worrying about it and move on.
I like to talk about 5-minute power moves. What can you do in 5 minutes to move the energy forward? Because people get stuck and they make up stories in their head about why this client's not going to return, or why, this isn't going to happen, and they convince themselves that it's not. And actually all you need is a 5-minute power move. And actually once you can make a plan, right? If you don't know, you don't know. And I think that's a big part of BBS and also social media management certification. You don't know what you don't know. And as soon as you know what you didn't know, you then can move forward. But it's this idea of actually, there are things I do not know. And until I know them, I'm not going to be able to make any moves whatsoever. So, better off finding out. But I love that. I love doing that piece of work with you, because it was so funny, because we had a call afterwards, and I didn't know, whether or not it had gone ahead, but it obviously had, and I love that. So, anyone listening, if you've got a client that's about to renew, or you've got something that you've been meaning to send, but you've been in DEFCON mode, you've been in that fight, flight, freeze, or that, and you're not moving on it. This is a great example of why you just got to send that email. So you said you really valued the get stuff done sessions. We had a slightly more profane word in there, but we've brought it down to get stuff done because it's easier to say. But why is it so important that you have not only time to learn about what to implement in your business, but actually time to do what you've learned in your business?
Part of it, I think, is what you were just saying, Joy, that we can get in our heads and we can give ourselves all sorts of reasons to procrastinate and not get on and do. And we talked about ABC earlier. Well, that A could equally be for action, because that for me has been, one of the brilliant things coming out of Business Beyond Social for me is, as you listed off a whole load of things earlier that I've achieved that I didn't expect to achieve. And that the get stuff done, having that community of people around you who are also trying to get things done, supporting each other, checking in with each other, advising each other, when somebody doesn't understand how MailerLite works, because who does understand how MailerLite works, helping each other through that. It's just been invaluable.
Yeah, we are bringing on a tech coach for year 2 who can really explain how MailerLite works. Because what we learned is that, there are some stumbling blocks, and you do need a pro in those cases. I love that. So, no, so important. And just to go back to on the kindness in the workplace, because this is your specialty and because this is the business you're building up, let's talk about some of the science behind it, and then also what products you've started to create and are delivering to your clients in that space. Because there might be people listening to this podcast that say, actually, I want to bring Becs into my business. And so just tell me a little bit more about the science behind kindness in the workplace, and also what products you've been developing.
Sure. Well, compassionate leadership is often how people might have heard this described within the workplace situation. And people are more and more interested in it, I think, especially after the pandemic, where we relied on kindness and our connections to see us through a really difficult time. So people are much more interested in it now. And there have always been, and hopefully always will be, compassionate leaders. And I think people think that it's an individual trait, like you're either kind or you're not. You either manage somebody in a particular way or you don't. But this can absolutely be learned without people feeling that they're being judged in any way, because we are all different. And I help teams and leaders to demonstrate more kindness in the way that they approach everyday things at work. And I run workshops for teams, but also for individual leaders, to explain, one, what do we mean by kindness? Because we all sort of intuitively think we know what it is, but there are different definitions out there. And how do we apply that in a workplace setting? And then also helping them to see kindness as something that is really key to business success, that is going to enable their teams to trust them. And trust is so important within organizations. It's that kind of glue that holds everything together. So for me, I talk about creating engaged teams, and we know that kindness is something that can drive up engagement, morale. People, when they're working in a kind environment, people are more likely to say good things about your organization, to want to stay with the organization. Retention rates are higher, sorry. And they're going to strive to do the very best that they can for your organization. And this is something that I've learned, over 20 years working in organizations like the BBC, like Transport for London, a host of different charities and public bodies. It's kind of core employee engagement. So I've taken what I've learned in my career and I'm applying that now through the lens of kindness. I've developed my own framework called Kind. And so I talk about leaders needing to recognize and reward their people. So that's the K in kind, that's kudos. And I should say none of this is rocket science, but actually sometimes we can just forget to do this, or we don't have the time to do this. And it's really important to make the time to invest in your people. The I is for inclusion, another area that there's a lot of focus on these days. And a big part of that is how can you as a leader create psychological safety so people feel able to put their hand up and say, I've got a question, I don't understand, I've got a great idea that could really make our business fly. You might never hear that idea if somebody doesn't feel comfortable to air it in the first place, thinks that it might get shot down, laughed at, whatever. So it's about creating a culture where people feel safe to do that. And then N is about nurture. So are you developing your people? Are you training them in the right things? And do you know your people as individuals? And then D is for direction. So it's really important for any leader to set a really clear direction. So have you got a vision for your team or your organization? What are your values? Do people understand them? Do they live them on a day-to-day basis? And how do you get people excited and motivated about the journey ahead for your organization? So that is kind, Kind. And I always try to emphasize the D, because I think people think that, as I said before, kindness is, all hearts and rainbows, very fluffy, nice to have. But actually, you have to be clear to be kind. And sometimes it's about giving somebody that honest, constructive, in the moment feedback that they will thank you for. They might not immediately, but they will, if you do it well, they will. And certainly in the long run, they will appreciate that. So yes, you have to be clear to be kind.
I love that. You have to be clear to be kind. But I also think that's true. Like if you don't have a direction that you're going in, then your team doesn't know what they're supposed to be working on. At TechPixies, we do a lot of launching. So, every couple months we do our social media superhero boot camp, but we have really clear targets in terms of all across the board, the number of people we want in the Facebook group, the number of people we want on the lives, the number of people doing their homework, and we track every single number. But if my team didn't know what we were trying to accomplish, they would have a really hard time knowing whether or not we were on track, So I think
and that really affect their well-being and the way that they feel about themselves and their work. And so much of this is tied in with individuals' well-being. How many people do you know, Joy, who, not people who work with you, obviously, but who on a Sunday evening are just dreading the next day coming around because they don't want to get up and go to work on a Monday morning? It's so sad, the number of people I've spoken to who feel that way. And so that is why I'm on this mission to create kind workplaces.
Well, I look at, I've been running this business since 2015 was our pilot year, and 2016 was when we sort of went into business on the 10th of October, 10/10, which I think is so cool in retrospect. So, really we're going on 9 years of being in this business. And I was not very good at managing people when I first started. And I, made a lot of mistakes, and, not everyone's going to work out for your organization, but also the way that you lead your organization matters massively. And, but I think, if your workshop had been around, I would have loved it because I had a lot of learning to do on this level. But over the years, I've picked up a lot of different things. And I think for sure, one of the things that we do, and I'm sure that this would be something you also encourage people to do, is every week when we get together with the team, the various team members, we ask them to catalog a personal win and a business win. So not just like, what did you do in the business this week, but what's going on in your personal life that went well this week. And that's actually where we know a lot more about each individual, and we're able to sort of, support them on a personal level as well, not just on a business level. And so I know what's going on in people's lives, and that's really special, because wherever they're at, we can support them. And I think I've worked in environments before where no one knew what was going on in my personal life, like had no idea, and I think that compassion, when you're talking about compassionate leaders, we've both done Dream Builder together. You went through Dream Builder as part of BBS. There's two whole lessons on forgiveness in Dream Builder, but one of the things that we talk about is compassion itself. So on that idea let's say the first level of compassion is, I know what's going on in your life, therefore I can adjust my behavior so that I'm able to work with you, in the sense that, like, a lot of times people don't know what's going on in someone's lives. Like the story that we give in Dream Builder is, Mary goes into a grocery store. She's the one who wrote Dream Builder. She goes into a grocery store and she's checking out all of her stuff. And then the clerk, the person behind the counter, the checkout lady, she's really rude and not very nice. And Mary leaves to go to the car, and there's the guy carrying her bags that goes with her, which happens in America, not necessarily here in England. But she says to him, "Gosh, wasn't she rude? She was so rude." Mary says to the boy carrying the bags, and he looks at her and he goes, "Well, she's having a really hard time today. Her son was hit by a car on his bike yesterday, and he's at the hospital. She has to come to work. She doesn't have a choice because of the insurance, etc." And immediately she said, "Oh my gosh, like, now that I knew the backstory, I had a completely different viewpoint of her behavior." Right. And I think she said, the cog wheels went off in her head, and she said, "Well, what if I could have compassion for someone in that moment without knowing the backstory?" Right. And so, I think at TechPixies, what we practice is, I want to know what's going on in your life, so that I can adjust your work schedule to make sure that I accommodate you. Also, we've made mistakes before where we've pushed people really, really hard for a period of time and not given them the downtime afterwards that they've needed to recover. And so, I think it's a nuanced dance between what's going on in that person's life and how you support them to navigate those challenges so that they can be the best performer in your business and your organization. But I think we've gotten a lot better over the years.
Oh, I'm sure you have. But there's a couple of things strike me there. So the first thing is that you're not alone in that scenario, Joy. There's a lot of people who come into management, are sort of thrust into it, and feel like they just have to do the very best that they can without any help. And they almost don't want to admit that they maybe need some additional support. And so that's why one of the things that I also offer is one-on-one coaching. So you might not want to put your hand up in your organization, talk to HR, said, "I need some management training," when you're already a manager and feel like you should know it all. One, you shouldn't know it all.
Yeah, but a lot of people go into management because by accident, and actually they weren't necessarily, they were good at what they were doing, which is why they get elevated to a manager position, but it's a completely different skill set.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I also loved what you were saying about, we never know what's going on in other people's lives. It's so true. If we think even just within the TechPixies community, we know that there are people within that community who are looking after elderly relatives, maybe with Alzheimer's, whose children are struggling with ADHD, who are maybe grieving or experiencing pregnancy loss or fertility issues. And, unless you know somebody really, really well, they're not going to talk to you about that. And so that's why knowing people is important, creating that trust. So if they do feel comfortable, they can share what's going on in their lives, or, there's no expectation for people to share that with their manager at work. And it just also means that you have an understanding, and you can make adjustments, as you say, and just be there for people. Yeah. I think the kindest thing you can do is to listen to people, actually.
Yeah, well, what we say is hold space, just
Mm.
hold space for people, whatever it is that they're going through, whatever it is that they're navigating, that you're holding space for them. And as you're talking and you're mentioning, I know all, when you're on the inside of all the tech pixies, you do know all the stuff that's going on. And there are women with so much strength that have come through our program, which obviously they've been strengthened by being in an environment where they get support as well. But I think everything you're doing is just absolutely fantastic. And I love that you also have renewed for a second year. So you're back for BBS round 2.
I am.
Here we go. Here we go. And what are your goals in the next year? What would you love? Like if we were talking, if we were going to speak, it's May 2025. I know normally we do a 3-year vision, but let's say, the amount of stuff that happened in a year, you could not have predicted it. So let's just throw it out there. What would you love in May of 2025 to be happening in your business?
I would love to be running my workshops regularly, to have a big client base, to have the flexibility to work when I want. That was always really important for me when I first set up my business. And yeah, to have people coming to me, and you very kindly called me a kindness expert at the top of this, Joy, but I'd like to earn that label, and to
I feel
part
like
of
a
my
brain
dream.
prime might help with that.
It might.
I am a kindness expert, and here's
Um,
why.
yeah, but maybe not for next year, but my long-term dream is doing the TED Talks around kindness, and having being really seen as an authority figure within this space. So I think that's enough of a to-do list for a year, isn't it, Joy?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Yeah, really owning the belief that you are an expert in this field, I think is going to propel you forward on all of this. And we talk about this a lot in all of the programs that I run. We teach brain priming, and it's really that concept of what's the core thought that if you believed it would be the foundation for everything else, right? And so that sort of idea that if we don't yet feel like an expert, we have to remind our brain of why we are an expert, the number of courses we've done in this subject, the number of workshops we've given, the amount of feedback we've got from our clients, the impact it has in real life, and if we can remind our brain of that on a regular basis, then we start to fundamentally believe, no, I actually am an expert at this. I am really good at this. And I've been doing this for a while now, and I've gotten some traction. And you start to really believe that you are what you think you are, or you are what you think you are what you want to think you are. That's probably the best way to put it. And when you are what you think you are, that's that goes right back to I think therefore I am, right? So if I believe this thing about myself, whatever it is, if I fundamentally believe it, then that will set the stage for everything else. So I love that so much of what we're doing is not just the tactics of build the website, get the lead magnet out there, have a social media plan, email your list, make an offer, do a workshop. It's also fundamentally, I am freaking good at what I do, and people deserve that. My work deserves to be out in the world, and I deserve to get paid for it. And what the work I do changes the world. When we really truly believe that is when things start to really come to fruition for us. So I'm excited about what the next year looks like for you, and really excited about working with you again. We've had a great renewal rate on BBS, and it was really a trial. This is sort of the third iteration. When I first, built this idea of a business course a couple of years ago, we've changed it, we've iterated it, we've moved it along, we've brought in some really great coaches. So I'm excited to see where that goes too, and really, really delighted to have you involved in it again. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you, if they want to bring a kindness workshop into their business, or they want to do some one-on-one coaching with you?
Yeah, the best place to go is to my website, which is shofficecoms.co.uk. So that's, in case people are wondering, my business name is, I work in a shed in the bottom of my parents' garden, which used to be my playroom as a kid. And I used to play like being a receptionist, and now I'm actually working in here. So yes, shofficecoms.co.uk. There's a form on there where you can book a quick 15-minute call with me, or you can just send me an email via a form. The details of all my socials are on there as well. I'm on LinkedIn as Rebecca Crosby 11, and also on Facebook and Instagram as @shofficecoms.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to everything in the show notes as well for anyone who wants to connect with you. Thanks so much for coming on and telling your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that was great. I love talking to women who've had a really wonderful impact from doing the courses that we offer. Bex is someone who takes action. You know, she gets it done. She moves forward, even if it's messy and imperfect. And I'm really glad she got to come on and tell her story, and also that we got to have a really great conversation about kindness in the workplace. I think it is such an important attribute to bring to the workplace. And I know for sure we do our best at TechPixies to create a kind workplace, and we've benefited from that. So thank you so much for listening. And of course, if you're interested in our Business Beyond Social program, or any of our programs, our Dream Builder program or our social media management certification program, you can go to techpixies.com. You can hit the contact via WhatsApp, and you can engage in a conversation with me, and I'll answer any questions you might have. You can also email us at support@techpixies.com. We would love to help you get started on your business dreams, either with our Business Beyond Social program or social media management certification program, or just don't know what you want to do, our Dream Builder program. So feel free to reach out. We want to support you wherever you're at. And thanks so much for listening. Have a great week.